While I was packing for our yearly fishing trip, I felt a strange mix of excitement and unease. This trip had always been a long-standing tradition with my closest friends, but something was different this time around. Usually the trip was a big affair, a chance for all of us and our wives to reconnect, celebrating our friendship that dated back to our school days. However, this year, things were shifting. Lucas couldn't join us right away because he had some work stuff to deal with, so his wife Tina decided to delay her plans too. Then, Jake found out he had a meeting and had to cut his trip short, which led to his wife staying home as well. When Anna realized she'd be the only wife coming from the start, she chose not to come along either. The change in plans was a real letdown. Our trips were known for not only strengthening our friendships, but also reigniting the spark in our marriages, filled with laughter and memorable moments. Now it seemed like a shadow of its former self. Even though I was still excited about the trip, there was a sense of emptiness, especially missing those close moments with Anna. Yet during the week before the trip, Anna and I shared an intense connection, something both draining and deeply appreciated. It felt like a bittersweet prelude to a changed tradition. For most of the year, our intimate life had settled into a routine that was more about going through the motions than excitement, happening maybe twice a week. This was just enough to keep things going, but lacked the fiery passion we had during the early days of our marriage. Back then, we couldn't keep our hands off each other, and we took every opportunity to be together. But about 5 years ago, that intensity started to fade, and our once frequent encounters dwindled to just a few times a week. Anna became increasingly reluctant, leading to frustration and occasional arguments on my part. Eventually, I had to accept this change in our relationship, learning to cope with my disappointment on my own. This context was on my mind that Thursday evening, as I sat in the den, trying to relax with a beer after packing. Anna was upstairs putting the kids to bed, a routine as ingrained in our lives as the shift in our intimate dynamics. After some time, I heard her footsteps coming downstairs and then heading into the kitchen. She joined me in the den, a glass of wine in her hand, and a serious expression on her face. "Honey," she started, her voice grave, "we need to have an important conversation. I know this might upset you, but please listen to everything I have to say before responding. I promise to answer any questions you have afterward. I should have brought this up months ago, but I needed to gather some information first." Her tone was sincere, hinting at the weight of what she was about to reveal. For some reason, a wave of fear surged through me. Anna's demeanor was both apologetic and scared, yet there was a clear resolve in her eyes. She was about to discuss something big. After taking a deep breath and a long sip of her wine, she continued, "I realize our intimate life hasn't been fulfilling for you over the past few years, honey. Honestly, I haven't found much joy in it either. Chris, I love you deeply, but you no longer ignite the same excitement in me that you used to. And Chris, I want to stay your wife. You're a wonderful father, a fantastic provider, and a true friend, but I'm seeking more than what you can offer me physically." I could feel anger bubbling up inside me. What was she getting at? I thought she had become distant, but what did the past week mean? I was sure I had made a meaningful impact. Just as I was about to interrupt, Anna raised her hand. "Chris, you promised to let me finish speaking before you responded." I bit my tongue, forcing myself to lean back in my chair, trying to manage my growing frustration as she continued. "Chris, there's someone I've known for a while who captivates me in a way I can't ignore. It's not just about sex, it's about making love in a way that I feel we can't anymore. I didn't want to go behind your back. I'll still be here for you, but I need to be honest about my needs. Being with him makes me feel alive, reminiscent of how we felt at the beginning of our marriage. It's something I can't seem to get enough of." I jumped up from my chair and began shouting at her. "You cheating witch! How could you do this to me?" Anna stood her ground and quickly moved in front of me, shoving me back into my chair. She towered over me and commanded, "Shut up. I told you that you wouldn't like what I had to say, but you promised to listen to me before speaking. Now shut up and listen." I found myself frozen in place, shocked, as Anna loomed over me, her gaze fierce with a determination I had never seen before. She continued, her words like a cold wind hitting me. "I've spoken with Jake about the divorce laws here, and you need to understand what you're up against. Divorcing me won't be in your favor. You'd end up losing a lot. I'd be entitled to a significant portion of your income for alimony and child support. The courts would likely grant me custody of the kids in the house to ensure their stability. Half of our savings and your retirement fund would also be mine. You'd be left with barely enough to live on, let alone maintain the lifestyle you're accustomed to. Leaving would mean our kids would have to grow up dealing with all the challenges of a broken home. For your own good and theirs, you need to accept the choice I've made. Despite everything, I still care about you and have respect for you. On the surface, not much will change. I'm not cutting you out of my life completely, but there will be times when I'll be gone, maybe even going on trips with him when we need time alone. As I tried to process her words, disbelief and anger began to bubble up inside me. Anna returned to her seat, and the room was filled with a heavy silence. After a moment, I finally spoke, my voice a mixture of pain and outrage. I can't believe this. How could you do this to me? After everything, you hit me with such a betrayal. How long has this been going on? Who is he? Anna shot me a sharp look and replied, Throwing around harsh words isn't going to solve anything, honey. I hope you can get over your feelings so we can keep living the way we have been. I won't tell you how long this has been going on or when or where it happens, and I definitely won't reveal who I'm involved with. It's none of your business, and if you start snooping around, I'll have to take actions you won't like. I've been seeing someone else, and I'm done with the secrecy. I need to be honest because sneaking around is too much. I'll be upfront about when I go out so you can take care of the kids, but I won't tell you who he is to avoid any problems. If you try to do anything against him or me, it won't end well, especially for our kids who still need you. Just know, if you try to hurt us, there will be serious consequences. I sat there, dumbfounded by how calmly Anna delivered her ultimatum. She seemed so confident, like she'd been planning this conversation for quite some time. No matter what I said, she had a ready response for everything. I should probably call the guys and let them know I'm not going on this trip. We've got a lot to sort out, and I've got a lot on my mind, I said, reaching for my phone. But Anna quickly grabbed my hand. She looked me straight in the eyes and said, No, you're going on this trip. The kids will stay with your parents as planned. I don't intend to be alone for the next 2 weeks, and I don't want you hanging around causing trouble or trying to figure out who I'm with. You need this time away to process all of this. I've made sure you'll actually go on this trip, and you won't like what happens if you don't. You'll regret it if you change your plans now. My friends and I have everything covered. We have eyes everywhere you might think to go. If you try anything to find out about my lover or disrupt our lives, I'll know, and you'll face serious consequences. You need to understand that my plan is solid, and it's what's best for me. If you cooperate, I'll make sure you don't end up miserable. You'll keep living just like you have been. Anna walked over to the desk and pulled out a thick envelope from her drawer. She handed it to me, saying, Here, this will make you believe me. We've documented all your actions for the past month. Read it, and you'll see we have everything down. We know exactly what you do, and if you try to interfere with my plans, we'll know, and I won't go easy on you. I'm going to bed now. If you want to join me tonight, feel free. You'll see not much has to change unless you start causing trouble. I sat there stunned, wondering who this woman was and what had happened to the wife I thought I knew. I watched her walk upstairs, swaying her hips in a way she knew was alluring, but for once, it didn't affect me at all. Finally, I opened the envelope and began to read. I was shocked by what I saw. The report on me was incredibly detailed, recording events I'd forgotten about until I saw them there in black and white. It was as if someone had been tracking my every move, noting even the smallest things like spilling coffee on my shirt. It documented my glances at other women, something natural for anyone. The thoroughness of the report made me suspect someone wealthy or well-connected was behind it, given the level of detail and scope. The report even included private conversations I thought were confidential, making me wonder if I was being spied on. As I thought about what to do next, particularly how to leave my cheating wife without losing everything in a divorce, I realized I needed advice. My lifelong friends who had been part of my life with Anna seemed like the obvious choice, but then a chilling thought crossed my mind. What if Anna was involved with one of them? Seeking their advice could backfire if the traitor was among them, sabotaging my plans before they even began. Just as I was lost in thought, Anna called out from the top of the stairs, provocatively suggesting I join her in bed rather than thinking too hard about things. She then returned to our bedroom, leaving me to ponder my next move in this complicated situation. I never made it to bed. I spent the night on the couch in the den. Anna woke me up in the morning as she started making breakfast, her voice sharp with irritation. "Get up, Dave. You need to get ready for work before the kids notice you didn't sleep in your own room last night. When you come back in 2 weeks, I expect you to act normal. If you mess things up for the family, remember the consequences I warned you about." "I'm willing to fulfill your needs occasionally," Anna said with a smug smile. "But you need to do your part too. Just remember, if you find another woman, I'll be filing for divorce immediately." Anger surged through me. "What's happening here?" I yelled. "You can have your fling and think it's okay, but I can't do the same. Not that I want to, but why is it acceptable for you and not for me?" Anna smirked, saying, "Come on, Dave. We both know you're satisfied with what you're getting from me right now. If you go looking for someone else, it's just to get back at me. I only look outside the marriage because you're not fulfilling my needs as a husband. If you could give me what I require, I wouldn't have to look elsewhere, and I expect you to do the same." I was so furious I could barely form words, but I finally managed to respond. "I can't believe this. You never mentioned wanting more or trying something different in bed. You never asked for anything we don't usually do. How was I supposed to know you wanted something else if you never told me? I always made sure you were satisfied. Most of the time, you had multiple orgasms before we finished. How could I know something was missing when you acted like everything was fine and I was happy?" Anna stood there and said, "Well, if you're asking now, you're really clueless, aren't you? It's not just about quantity, dear. It's about quality. You never learned how to please me, and I realized you never would, so I started getting what I needed elsewhere. Now get dressed. I'm tired of hearing you complain." I went upstairs feeling defeated and went through my usual morning routine. Breakfast was quiet, and when our son Eric asked what was wrong, I started to explain, but Anna interrupted, saying, "Your dad's just dealing with a little issue. He'll be fine after his vacation." She shot me a glare before returning to her meal. At work, I decided to ignore some of Anna's advice and cancel my trip with the guys. We were supposed to leave directly from work and meet at our usual spot, a Denny's, before heading out together. My F-150 truck had enough space to carry all our gear. Steve would ride with me, and Jake would bring his car since he had to return midweek. I called Steve to explain that something had come up and I couldn't make it. I even offered him my truck for hauling the gear. Steve chuckled. "Oh, Dave, that's not happening. I just spoke to Anna, and she warned me you might try to bail. She said you've been stressed out lately, but checked with your secretary and confirmed you have nothing important on your schedule. I promised her I'd make sure you went on this trip. If I have to, I'll drag you along myself. You're coming with us, and you're going to enjoy yourself." I started to argue but felt a sudden chill. Could Steve be involved? No. Anna had mentioned she'd be leaving this weekend and Steve was coming with me. But wait, Lucas was staying back and joining us later in the week. Could it be him or someone else? I felt trapped. I needed to think carefully and make a plan. I wanted to buy some surveillance equipment, but how? From what I saw in that report, Anna and her friends had been monitoring my credit card purchases, phone calls, and even cash withdrawals. Any unusual spending would be noticed overnight. I was at my desk, lost in thought when Anna called. The moment I answered, she launched into a tirade. "Chris, I told you to go on your trip, and it's not wise for you to snoop into my business. Steve just told me you tried to back out. This is your last warning. Jake can't push me or you'll lose everything and never see your kids again. Do you get it this time?" She hung up abruptly, leaving me in shock. Had Steve betrayed me? Was he part of this, or was he genuinely concerned for me? My old friends didn't seem as close as they used to. It felt like they were more Anna's friends now, and I was just tagging along. Could it be true? No, not all of them. Nevertheless, I decided to go on the trip and met the guys at Denny's. While they laughed and joked around, I sat silently, consumed by my thoughts. Eventually, Jake asked me what was wrong. I hesitated, then said, "Anna has some wild ideas, and I don't know how to deal with them." I can hardly believe she meant what she said, but if she did, my marriage is on shaky ground. Steve exchanged a glance with Jake and commented, "You know how Anna is, Jake. She called me earlier today saying Loverboy here was trying to bail on the trip. She said he's been edgy and difficult lately and needs this time to unwind. I assured her we'd make sure he joined us and had a good time. Jake added, "Yeah, I've noticed he's been moody over the past few months. He hasn't been himself with us. A little attitude adjustment won't hurt, and we can help with that. I've got beer and his favorite whiskey in my car." Turning to me, he added, "Nothing ever stopped us from enjoying our time at the cabin. Sure, the ladies won't be there this time, but that just means more drinks and stories for us." We set off, driving to the fishing spot by the stream. It was a quick 2-hour ride, and we arrived with enough time for some serious drinking before turning in for the night. The next morning, both guys were eager to fish, so we set off. Fishing helped clear my mind for a while, but as we headed back to the cabin, thoughts of Anna returned. Her words echoed in my head, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she truly meant them. Instead of facing reality, I let the guys talk me into more drinking. During dinner, as we kept the drinks flowing, Jake looked at me and said, "All right, Dave, spill it. You look like you've lost your best friend, but I'm still here. What's bothering you?" I figured I had to let it out before I lost my mind. These guys had been my friends since grade school, and I trusted them completely. So I told Jake and Steve about how things had been going downhill in my marriage over the past few years, and the bombshell Anna had dropped on me. When I finished, Jake leaned back in his chair and said, "Wow, Dave, are you sure that's what Anna said? I can't believe she'd even think like that. We've known her for years, and she's always been the sweetest woman." "Yeah, I know," I replied. "But that's exactly what she told me. It sounds unreal, but that's what happened." Jake took a deep breath and said, "Dave, I can't tell you how a divorce would turn out, but she's right about some things. If she's really doing what you suspect, you've got to decide how you want to handle it. If she's discreet, you need to consider whether breaking up the family is worth it, considering the emotional toll on the kids, you, and Anna. In custody battles, courts tend to side with the mother unless she's proven unfit. You'd likely lose custody. Plus, you'd have to support the kids financially, including college costs. Since Anna doesn't work, you'd be on the hook for alimony until she remarries. You might lose the house, either giving it to her or selling it and splitting the proceeds. Savings and retirement funds would also need to be divided. Child support can eat into your income significantly. You'd also need to provide health care for the kids. Hearing Jake, my lawyer friend, lay out the potential consequences was even more daunting than Anna's warnings. "I have to find out who she's with. I can't just sit here and do nothing." "As your friend, Dave, I get it," Jake said. "But as an attorney, I have to advise against any drastic measures. If anything happens to one of Anna's lovers, I'll have to report it. My advice is to maintain the status quo. Maybe she'll change her mind or get it out of her system. It might be better for you to let things be." "Jake, I can't believe you're saying this. How would you feel if Megan pulled something like this on you? Would you just accept it?" I asked. Jake looked uncomfortable. "No, I'd be as upset as you, but I trust Megan wouldn't do that. She loves me and knows I'm the best partner for her. I provide for our family, and she wouldn't risk losing that. Dave, you might need to come to terms with your situation. Based on that report, if Anna is as vigilant as you say, you're in a tough spot. Trying to investigate her affair might backfire. She could even know about this conversation." "Did she know where we were going?" I asked, a new worry forming in my mind. I was puzzled by Steve's constant smile and Jake's odd cheerfulness. I couldn't believe they were so relaxed about Anna's treatment of me. Finally, I sighed and said, "Well, forget it. Let's just have some more drinks." The next morning, I woke up early. Wanting some time alone, I grabbed my fishing gear and headed upstream to my favorite spot. Just as I was about to start fishing, my phone rang. I always carried it with me, though reception was usually spotty. Seeing Anna's name on the caller ID, I ignored it. After she left a message, I listened to it. To my shock, she said, "Honey, I heard you got some good advice from Jake last night. I hope you're going to follow it. You're too good of a father and provider to lose, but if you make a foolish move, I can manage the kids without you. Enjoy yourself." I stared at the phone, stunned. How did she know about my conversation with Jake and Steve? The cabin had no cell service, and there was no landline. My gear must be bugged, and someone had to be nearby to pick up the transmission. I needed to check for it later. Unbeknownst to me, Steve and Jake had been watching from the tree line while I listened to the message. They exchanged grins and thumbs ups before disappearing back into the woods, heading to the cabin. Steve glanced at Jake and asked, "Think that'll do it, or should we keep up the pressure?" "We should keep the detailed reports coming for a while and continue nudging him to accept things," Jake replied. "We've got a good setup here. If we can convince him to let Anna have her fun and spend more nights and weekends with us, we'll be in a great position. Just imagine how much better it'll be with no time limits. She's so addicted to our bedroom antics that she'll do anything we ask just to get more. If we handle this wisely, we can loop in our wives, telling them we're helping Dave figure out his problems while we're really with Anna. That'll be our perfect cover." Dave stayed by the river until nearly noon, but he wasn't really fishing. His mind kept drifting back to his marriage, wondering how he could uncover Anna's affair, end it, and get some payback. But he knew he couldn't act until he found out who she was seeing and where it was all happening. Meanwhile, on a cozy Friday evening, Anna and her companion enjoyed a private moment, anticipating their friend's upcoming visit. After a day of getting ready for a weekend at the cabin, they finally had a chance to relax. Anna, feeling flirtatious, approached him with a twinkle in her eye. She handed him a drink and settled in beside him, their conversation flowing smoothly. The air buzzed with excitement for the weekend ahead. They shared laughs, reminisced about past escapades, and eagerly discussed their plans. As they sat close, their connection deepened. Feeling bold, Anna leaned in for a gentle kiss, which he happily returned. Their affectionate exchange turned into gentle touches as they expressed their affection for each other. Anna, feeling the warmth of the moment, whispered sweetly in his ear. The air was filled with anticipation, not just for the tenderness they shared, but for the joy of spending the weekend with friends. They talked about their friend arriving soon, excitedly speculating about the activities they had lined up. The mention of a friend's visit on Wednesday added to the excitement, sparking more conversation about the adventures that awaited. As the evening wore on, they stayed close, savoring each other's company. Their bond was a testament to their deep connection, strengthened by the anticipation of reuniting with close friends. In that moment, they were reminded of the simple pleasures of companionship, the excitement of good times, and the beauty of moments spent with someone special. "Oh God," Anna exclaimed, "I've been craving this for so long. I can't wait for the others to arrive. Isn't Jake supposed to be here early Wednesday?" "Yeah, babe," he replied. "Then you'll have both of us for 2 whole nights before I have to play nice with your husband. I'll be so relieved when we can all 3 be together. Just having 1 or 2 of you at a time has been tough after what you've done to me. Dave can't satisfy me anymore on his own. Do you think we've covered everything? I adore him, and he's a wonderful provider and father. I don't want to lose him. Yeah, we can keep him in check. I just hope he doesn't start confiding in our wives and causing trouble. We've been fine the last 3 years. We should have been happy with that instead of getting greedy. Spending nights and weekends with you sounds great, but we might be pushing Dave too hard. We might have set something loose we can't control. Well, the bugs we planted and the dirt we found on him should make him back off. I just wish he wasn't so honest. It's unbelievable we haven't found anything shady. How can a guy in business for himself not take advantage to make extra cash? Oh, by the way, Anna, are you still keeping an eye on the finances like we discussed? Yeah, I convinced the bank to limit his cash withdrawals, but I can't control his check writing. At least we can track those. I wish I could monitor the business more closely. Now I regret pushing him to hire office help so I could stay home with the kids. Anna chuckled, adding, "Of course, if I hadn't stayed home, we wouldn't be having as much fun, would we? I was so frustrated seeing you guys only a couple of nights a month. Being a stay-at-home mom allowed us to play more, and now we can play whenever we want." Dave was somber and preoccupied by the river. His friends tried to engage him and lift his spirits, but they weren't having much success. On Tuesday evening, they got him drunk, and after he passed out, Jake and Steve stepped onto the porch to talk quietly. "I'm starting to worry, Jake," Steve said. "We've been talking to him for days, and he's getting more determined to leave Anna and get revenge. He's on the edge. How do we handle this? It seems simple when we plan to control him and spend more time with her. What if he finds out and tells our wives?" "Relax, Steve," Jake assured him. "I can manipulate things in the divorce and make Anna look like an angel. Even if they split, it doesn't matter. We started this because she wanted to keep him around. Sure, it's exciting to be with her while she's married, but she'd still be fun if she weren't. We just need to keep him and our wives from learning the truth so we don't end up in trouble. If it comes to it, we might have to put some pressure on him, but let's see how things unfold over the next couple of weeks," Steve suggested. Dave had woken up in time to catch snippets of their conversation from the front porch, even though he couldn't hear everything. He heard enough to know they were frustrated with his refusal to accept Anna's infidelity and thought they needed to convince him to be more tolerant. Now, his anger was directed not only at Anna, but also at his so-called friends. Before falling back asleep, he resolved to tackle the situation on his own, without their so-called help. In the days that followed, Dave became more distant from his friends. Steve and Lucas grew concerned when all he would say was, "I'm going to find out who Anna is seeing and make sure they both pay for it." Finally, the day came for them to head home. Steve rode with Dave, but the silence in the truck was thick and uncomfortable. Lucas drove separately, and as soon as they reached an area with decent cell service, he called Jake. Jake and Anna sat in Dave's living room, listening as Lucas gave his report. "He's angrier than ever. If anything, he's more determined to make you pay than when I arrived. We might need to keep a low profile until he cools off. If he catches us, things could get messy." Anna sat in shock, tears running down her cheeks, almost on the verge of panic. Jake, his jaw clenched and face flushed with frustration, sat next to her. After a brief exchange with Lucas, Jake turned to Anna. He pulled her close, rubbing her back gently to calm her. "Anna, don't worry. I didn't want to escalate things unless absolutely necessary, but it seems we might not have a choice. See how he behaves this weekend, and let me know on Sunday. If it looks like he's going to make trouble, we'll file on Monday. I can freeze your personal accounts, and I'm pretty sure I can get the business accounts frozen, pending court approval. We'll convince the judge that he might try to drain the accounts and sabotage the business." Dave arrived home late Friday night and found Anna in the living room, looking like she'd been crying. She was disheveled, wearing one of his old shirts. As Dave walked by, he noticed something off about her appearance that ignited his anger even more. Anna gave him a defiant look, as if daring him to say something. Dave was fuming but walked past her in silence. Anna tried to follow him into their bedroom, even attempting to join him in the shower, but Dave firmly told her to leave, expressing his disappointment and anger. He told her he'd hoped they could resolve their issues, but now he felt there was no chance. Dave warned Anna that despite the hurt she caused, he would find a way to respond to her actions and those of her accomplice. Gathering his thoughts, Dave began packing his belongings into his truck, making several trips from the house. While he was doing so, he overheard Anna on the phone. One of the last things he attempted before leaving was to transfer money from their joint accounts, only to find he was locked out because the password had been changed. This discovery enraged him further. When he turned around, he saw Anna watching him, which only intensified his frustration. With a remorseful tone, Anna said, "I hoped you'd come to your senses and we wouldn't have to get to this point. You realize you're making a huge mistake, right? I love you more than any man I've ever known. I don't want to lose you. If you persist, you'll risk losing the business and everything we've built. Just so you know, I've hired Jake as my lawyer. I just spoke with him and informed him of your behavior. He'll be in touch." Dave was floored. He knew Jake was also her friend, but he'd been Dave's attorney since he started practicing law. He couldn't believe Jake would betray him like this. Furious, Dave left the house and drove straight to his office and warehouse complex, planning to stay there for a while. On the way in, he stopped at the gate and spoke to the security guard. "I'm having some trouble with my wife. She and her lover have threatened me. I need you to call in extra security and keep all unauthorized persons off the property." Saturday morning around 10 a.m., as Dave was leaving the complex to get breakfast, he was stopped at the gate. A man approached, confirmed Dave's identity, and handed him an envelope, saying, "You've been served." After the man left, Dave opened the envelope to find a restraining order. It stated he couldn't come within 300 feet of his wife, children, or their home. Additionally, there was an order requiring court approval for any expenditures from his personal or business accounts, preventing him from depleting company assets before the divorce proceedings, set to start the following Monday. After grabbing breakfast, Dave drove to his assistant's house. When she opened the door, she said, "Dave, you look awful. What's going on? I need to talk. I need help, and you're the only person I can trust. I'm sorry to bother you on the weekend, but I'm in deep trouble and don't know who I can trust or talk to." She stepped aside and gestured for Dave to come in. "Come on in, Dave." "Would you like some coffee?" Evelyn asked as she led Dave into the kitchen, where her husband Simon was sitting at the table. It looked like Dave had interrupted their brunch. Plates of eggs and toast were still on the table. "I'm sorry," Dave said, hesitating at the doorway. "I shouldn't have barged in like this. I can come back later." "Nonsense, Dave," Simon said, motioning him to sit. "You look like you've been through hell. Have a seat and talk to us." Reluctantly, Dave sat down and began to recount everything that had happened since that Thursday 2 weeks ago. "I'm at my wit's end," he admitted. "I have no idea what to do next. My so-called best friends spent the last 2 weeks telling me to let Anna continue her affair, saying it's been going on for years, and I didn't notice. So why make a fuss now? And now Jake, my former best friend, is representing Anna as her attorney, entangling me in legal complications. I can't even spend money without court approval, and I won't get that until at least Monday. All my credit cards were declined at breakfast. I can't even afford a meal." Evelyn leaned back, clearly shocked. "Dave, I can't believe Anna would do this to you," she said, turning to Simon. "Si, can we help him out?" Simon nodded, thoughtful. "Dave, if what you're saying is true, you need some serious support. But first, let's make sure you're not being monitored." He eyed Dave suspiciously. "Come with me." Simon led Dave downstairs to the walkout basement. Stopping at the bottom of the stairs, Si instructed, "Dave, undress and hand me your clothes. There's a shower over there. I'll bring you some clean clothes to wear. I'll take yours outside. After you clean up, we'll talk. I doubt there's a bug in our house, but they might have followed you here and planted a device nearby." Feeling ridiculous, Dave changed into some old sweatpants Si gave him, and the three of them retreated into a cement storm shelter beneath the stairway. At first, Dave felt awkward, but Si and Evelyn encouraged him to continue. They spent the next hour communicating through written notes, planning their next steps. After discussing all possible scenarios, Si left to contact some people he thought could help Dave. They agreed that Dave would have minimal contact with these individuals, and Evelyn would provide the necessary funds to start the investigation. While Anna assumed Dave was taking a break, they planned to monitor her and Dave's 3 friends for any suspicious activity. On Sunday, Dave, Si, and Evelyn decided to catch up over lunch, enjoying each other's company and sharing some laughs. Meanwhile, Anna hosted a meeting at her house with Jake, Lucas, and Steve to discuss urgent matters. After their meeting ended, they relaxed, contemplating the situation. "I'm feeling uneasy about this," Steve confessed, breaking the silence. "Meeting today might not have been a good idea. What if Dave finds out? Maybe we should lay low until things settle down. We had a stable arrangement for years, and pushing things now seems risky. I'm worried this could backfire." He continued to express his concerns about their recent decisions, mentioning Dave's activities and his time spent with his assistant and her husband. Steve noted that their surveillance hadn't picked up anything suspicious, but he was nervous about the potential consequences of their actions. "Stop worrying," Jake replied. "We've got Dave on a tight leash. He can't access any funds, and we're monitoring him closely enough to anticipate his moves before he makes them. Right now, he's with his assistant and her husband, probably wallowing in self-pity. If he tries to leave, we'll know before he gets anywhere. He can't even make a phone call without us knowing exactly what he's saying, whether it's from his phone or hers." On Monday morning, Dave began the difficult task of finding a new attorney to represent him. After speaking with several candidates, he scheduled interviews with 2. It was challenging since Jake had been his lawyer for years, but with Jake now representing Anna, Dave had no choice. Eventually, he chose Julia Brooks, who impressed him with her confidence and came highly recommended. Their first step was to initiate legal proceedings to free up Dave's business accounts and secure enough funds for his living expenses. They also decided to hire another private investigator to keep tabs on Anna. Dave authorized wiretaps and video surveillance for his house. Furthermore, he instructed Julia to begin divorce proceedings based on adultery. That evening, Si handed Dave surveillance footage from the previous day. Watching it, Dave felt a wave of anger and betrayal wash over him. Discovering Anna's involvement with all 3 of his friends intensified his resolve. At least now he knew exactly who he was dealing with. The following morning, Dave made several copies of the incriminating video. He sent them to each of his friends' wives and his attorney, kept one for himself, and locked the original in a safe deposit box. To make matters worse for his former friends, Dave uploaded the video to several adult websites, ensuring that the participants' real names were attached. He set up the videos as pay-per-view, funneling any proceeds to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Smiling to himself, Dave remembered that Jake had left him with the access codes to his office, allowing Dave to upload everything from there and potentially implicate Jake if anyone traced the uploads back to their origin. Dave also sent still images from the video to several of Anna's friends and family. He used the computers at the local college library to cover his tracks. Though he briefly thought about using Jake's office for this task, he decided against it, knowing it would be suspicious for Jake to access such sites. The college computers were easy for Dave to use. He'd done it before without getting caught. Even though they required a student ID and password for login, Dave often found computers left logged in by others, allowing him to use someone else's credentials. Plus, the lack of CCTV cameras at the college meant he didn't worry about being caught on video. By Wednesday, Dave was fielding calls from people who had watched the video. Early that afternoon, Anna called, sobbing into the phone. "How could you do this to me?" she cried. "I thought you loved me. I told you it was just sex because you couldn't give me what I needed. Why would you ruin my life like this?" Dave laughed, replying, "Hannah, I didn't ruin your life. You did that all by yourself. I'm just delivering on the promise I made, if you went through with your plans. Frankly, I'm sure you've been cheating on me for a while. Remember all those times when one of the guys made sure I was out and I'd come home late? Things that didn't add up before make sense now. By the time I'm done with you and those idiots, you'll regret ever crossing me." Later that day, Anna's sister called. "Looks like you finally figured out your oh-so-perfect wife," she said. "I assume you're the one who sent this video. Well, it seems she and I can share the boys now. I didn't know she was with them until I got this." Her maniacal laughter echoed in Dave's mind long after she hung up. Jake called next, and as soon as Dave answered, Jake began yelling. Dave played along, realizing it was Jake on the other end. He kept Jake talking for almost 15 minutes. Jake made both physical and legal threats, saying, "You idiot. By the time I'm done with you, you'll wish you'd never messed with me. I'll have your wife whenever I want, and we'll take most of your money too. If you'd just listen to what I told you, you'd still have your family, money, and a decent life. After I'm done, I'll have the guys teach you a lesson. I've been with her since high school, and I'll continue long after you're gone. Enjoy living in the dumps, because that's where you'll end up. I'll hit you with every lawsuit I can think of, just to bleed you dry defending against them." Later calls from Anna's parents were difficult. Her mother, crying, asked, "Dave, how could you do this to Anna? I understand she hurt you, but spreading pictures of her everywhere was too much. Couldn't you have resolved this more civilly?" By the end of the day, Dave felt satisfied with his actions. He knew that the computerized answering system his company had installed was paying off, especially given the recordings it captured that day alone. Initially, he had doubts about how Jake, his former attorney and friend, had advised him to set up the system with the telecom provider. The system answered calls and provided a warning before recording began. "Thank you for calling Central U.S. Inventory, Logistics, and Security Company. All calls are recorded for later use. If you do not want your call recorded, please hang up now. If you wish to speak to someone, please press 0 to be connected to an operator." It seemed Jake had either ignored the warning or was too furious to care, as all his threats and boasts were captured after the warning he had insisted on including. Dave saw this as poetic justice. As the legal cases unfolded, those in Anna's circle distanced themselves from her. Luckily, Sai's acquaintance had managed to capture video and audio on the first Saturday, as the private investigators had found little concrete evidence. Although some suspicious calls were recorded, they were mostly ambiguous. One of Julia's first actions was to report Jake to the State Bar Association. His law license was quickly suspended, and he was permanently disbarred due to his unethical conduct and threats, even before the divorce and other legal proceedings concluded. Dave's divorce was finalized, with Anna receiving a modest share of the marital assets, about 25%. Dave retained ownership of his company. Additionally, Dave was awarded custody of the children thanks to a subtle detail that had initially gone unnoticed. During the photo shoot when Sis' acquaintance captured images of Anna and her companions, they inadvertently caught an unexpected scene. In the background of one photo, a child could be seen peeking into the house from the backyard through the patio door. This damning piece of evidence played a pivotal role in the judge's decision to grant Dave full custody of the children. Dave's legal actions against Jake were incredibly effective. He was awarded $1, $3 million in damages for breach of attorney-client privilege, and Jake's unethical behavior in representing Anna while still serving as Dave's attorney. Jake faced severe penalties for his inappropriate relationship with Anna and numerous ethical violations, resulting in significant fines payable to the state. As Dave pursued legal action, Jake's financial situation took a nosedive, bringing him to the brink of bankruptcy. Meanwhile, Megan, Jake's wife, drained most of their remaining assets during their divorce. Similarly, Tina, Lucas's wife, received a substantial portion of his assets after their divorce was finalized. Surprisingly, Steve and Luna stayed married, as it was revealed that Luna had willingly participated in the group's activities. However, Steve grew increasingly dissatisfied with his friend's ongoing exploitation of Luna. When Jake and Lucas moved in with Steve after being ousted from their homes, tensions escalated. One evening, Lucas's frustration boiled over, leading to a violent confrontation where he lashed out at Jake and Steve. Lucas ended up hospitalized due to his injuries, and both Jake and Lucas were later convicted and sentenced to a year in jail. Consequently, Steve and Luna's marriage also came to an end. Nearly a year later, Dave and Evelyn sat together, reflecting on a news article detailing the conflict between Jake, Lucas, and Steve over Luna. Evelyn then asked Dave if he still had any contact with Anna, noting her supervised visits with their children. "We only communicate when it's absolutely necessary, and it's usually about the kids," Dave replied with finality. "I have no interest in talking to her, and if I could avoid it completely, I would." "I was just curious," Evelyn said. "You two seemed so perfect for so long, and then everything fell apart. I've always wondered if you understood why she did what she did. I can't wrap my head around why someone who loves their spouse would act that way." Dave met Evelyn's gaze, a knot forming in his stomach. He clenched his jaw before reaching into his desk drawer and pulling out a folder. Handing it to Evelyn, he said, "I'm not sure why I kept this letter, or even why I agreed to read it. Remember when Anna's mom visited the office in tears about 7 months ago? She gave me this letter and insisted I read it before she left." Evelyn opened the folder and began to read. "Dear Chris, you might wonder why I still call you dearest, but despite everything, you're the man I love. I've made mistakes that hurt you deeply, and for that, I'm truly sorry. My actions weren't premeditated, but I need to be honest about them. Our past relationships with our high school friends were complicated, but they didn't impact us until I made a terrible mistake on our 9th anniversary. You were busy with work, and I ended up drinking too much at a Valentine's Day party. Feeling lonely, things took a turn when Jake and Lucas drove me home. As we reminisced about the past, I had a moment of weakness and gave in to temptation with them. That night, I experienced intense feelings and pleasures that were new to me. This led to further encounters with them, sometimes individually or together, whenever you were away. These moments were filled with excitement and the fear of getting caught, which somehow added to the thrill. Jake later suggested an arrangement to avoid the risk of being caught, believing you might accept it to keep our family intact. I convinced myself you might agree, hoping to avoid losing you and our children, but I now realize the pain and betrayal my actions have caused you. I'm genuinely sorry for the hurt I've caused and hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me. Yours always." Anna Evelyn looked up from the letter, her eyes moist but her anger restrained. "Dave, I truly believe she still loves you more than anyone else. I know she's hurting, but Dave, she was almost as much a victim as you were. I think Jake was predatory. We've both heard awful rumors about him over the years. I wouldn't be surprised if he deliberately got her drunk that first night. No true friend would take advantage of her like that." "Yeah, I know, Evie, but I'm not entirely convinced she's telling the whole truth. She always paid more attention to Jake than I was comfortable with. I brushed it off, but there were several times we argued after a party because I thought she was too friendly, letting him take too many liberties. But I never had enough evidence to confront them. After Jake's phone call, When I finally caught them, thanks to you and Sai, I had enough doubts to get DNA tests done on the children. You can't imagine the relief I felt when the test confirmed I was their father. Well, anyway, I think she believes she loves me, but it's not genuine love. It's more like infatuation or deep affection. I was easy to live with, a good provider and a father. I now realize I was probably her last choice, and we married because, well, I'm not sure why she married me. I loved her deeply, but I don't think she felt that same depth of love for me. I believe that's why she cheated and continued to do so. She was selfish and only cared about her own pleasure, needs, and desires.